back in a period of about 2005, 2006, Graham Bethel, who owns the Mustang out there, came to me and he said, the Wanaka people are selling their Spitfire, FUP that Spitfire was. I don't think we should let it leave the country. Would you be interested in forming a syndicate and buying it? And I said, oh yeah. And so we looked at that, and there wasn't a lot of other interest. And I tried to negotiate with them, and they told me how much they wanted for it. So I inquired around the world, and it seemed a very large amount of money relative to other Spitfires. And anyway, that whole thing eventually fell over, and I just commenced getting the MX2 done. And the MX2 came as a pretty rough kit and built by Avspecs. And as I said, I first flew that on the 23rd of January 2008. But somewhere about a month before that or so, Warren Denham from Avspecs said to me, "Hey, still interested in the Spitfire?" And I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Well, there's a 2-seat Spitfire just come up for sale in Florida." And he told me a bit about it, and I said, "Yeah, I'll be really interested in that." And the next day he came back and said, "Sorry, it's gone. But the guy that's selling it he's going to be out here next week, so you can have a talk to him anyway." He was from a place called Provenance Aircraft Sales. I met him the following week, Simon Brown. He said, "Yeah, it's a really good sale. It's gone to Australia. We've got a deposit. I'm not expecting anything bad." He said, "But if it does fall over, I'll give you a call first off." And that was that. I never thought any more about it. And 6 weeks or so later, I get a call. "You're still interested in that aeroplane?" I said, "Hell yeah." What had happened was the guy who bought it was an Australian. Over the Christmas period, he'd been taking his family for a ride in a light twin-engine aeroplane. He was flying around the southeast coast of Australia, around Victoria, around there. The weather was a bit adverse, and he flew through some wet weather conditions. He flew into the sea and killed himself, which was a bit tragic for the family. But it finished up the aeroplane, came back on the market. I paid a deposit on it, subject to seeing it. The other good thing that had happened at the time was that Warren Denham's Avspecs had just finished the Spitfire, the Mark V Spitfire they had done, which was the one labelled Marion, and it had been put in a container and was actually on the water going there. And he said the good thing is that container, we built the framework and everything to carry a Spitfire. So you just put your straight back in that container and that'd be good. And so that was all. I went across with Warren, we went across to Florida, and I was going to go for a fly on this thing. The cloud base was about level with the top of the hangar. Nice and warm, but the cloud base was and so obviously I wasn't going to go for a fly. But I looked at it and it just looked marvellous, and we started the engine and did those sorts of things. So I said, yes, I'll buy it. And then the fun started. First thing was getting it across America, and in the winter they wouldn't let it fly in the rain. Provenance people, they said, because they would damage the prop. And so that took sort of 6 weeks to do. It arrived and got put in the container, and the container got sent to Long Beach. And then the fun really started, because somebody in this sort of the government security operation saw that this thing was going out and it was a piece of military equipment, and all the requirements for military equipment hadn't been met. And it just was horrible. The paraphernalia and everything that went on was just unbelievably bad. We finished up having to get a lawyer from Washington. And I can tell you, lawyers in Washington aren't dirt cheap. I was talking to this lady, and she was telling me how serious it was. And she said, "Oh, she just had a client from Florida who was a construction company. And this construction company had taken a contract with the American Army to do some civil engineering works in Iraq." And so they got all their stuff together and put it in containers and all the stuff they carry and sent it to the port. Along with the stuff they had a Humvee and a Hummer. And so the security people got all this gear, and they went through it, and it was all okay. And they came to the Hummer and they said, "That's military equipment, you can't export it." And there was a bit of an argument, and construction people aren't totally discreet when it comes to arguing with people they don't know, and told them so. So they took this Hummer out and crushed it on the grounds that these people were questioning their authority. You know, and I just thought of my $4 million Spitfire. And the whole idea was horrible. But we approached the New Zealand embassy in Washington. Trevor Bland wrote to the American ambassador here, and finally got approved, subject to the fact I had to agree never ever to sell it without the express written permission of the State Department. So they sent me a document about this thick, I kid you not, and it was a document that nations sign when they, NATO or someone signs when they get F-16s. And that's all the stuff went on forever. And included in there were questions like, what gives you the authority to act on behalf of your government? So anyway, I signed that and it got released, and that was good. And then someone in customs saw this and they said, there's a problem here. We had a container with a Spitfire in it, came from Auckland to here, and now we've got the exact same container with a Spitfire in it going from here to Auckland. It's obviously full of drugs. So they took it off-site to their off-site place and unpacked everything and repacked everything. The only thing that caused them any concern was there were a number of bottles of glycol, a lot of plastic containers of glycol, which they tested to make sure it wouldn't have any other things other than glycol in it, but that was all done. When this aeroplane arrived, I first flew in May the 8th. Keith Skilling did the test flying on it, and he took me for a fly in the latter part of May 2008, and I rated it a short time later and started flying it. It wasn't until the publicity came about this thing being in the air that I realised how significant Spitfires were. I got innumerable cards and letters and comments, a letter from a little old lady with a poem that her brother had written, who had been a Spitfire pilot. The emotion involved with these things is just unbelievable. And for me it's good too. One of the really great things was that 485 Squadron, which was the New Zealand Spitfire Squadron, used to have a reunion once a year at Whenuapai. And I used to go across to that and meet these old guys and fly around and give them a bit of a display. And it was really marvellous. They don't have those anymore because there's only 2 of them left alive. And one of them, a guy named Max Collett, I ran into at Napier 3 weeks ago at Napier at the Art Deco weekend, and he must be mid-90s, but he looks about 80 or something. He looks pretty, I'd like to be like him when I get that old. A lot of people gave me books on Spitfires, and I read a lot of books on Spitfires, and there's some very surprising things I learned about them. One was the number of losses for other than combat reasons. The first contract let for Spitfires was for 310 Spitfires. And when war was declared, Britain declared war on Germany on the 3rd of September 1939, and by then 306 had been delivered of the 310. And at that stage they had 10 operative squadrons with 18 aeroplanes each, and one squadron was being converted. 71 units were in maintenance, and that wasn't necessarily because of a fault. It was that when they came out of the factory they went to maintenance because the Air Force did things to them and whatever. There were 11 in training establishments, and 36 had been written off in accidents. 1 year, 36 aircraft had been written off. During the Battle of Britain, it was equally as surprising. The figures are just unbelievable. Between the 1st of July and the 11th of August 1940, so this is just getting into the beginning of the Battle of Britain, they lost 124 Spitfires due to enemy action and 62 others. From the 12th of August to the 24th of August, they lost 133 and 44 due to enemy action. The most surprising, the 7th, the 15th of September, things were getting better then, but it was only 1 week. They lost 127 in combat and 8 in accidents. The numbers, and I've got similar figures for the American forces. American forces lost 170 aircraft a day during the time they were in the war, and something like half of them were in accidents. It's just utterly incredible. I have an interesting little memo here written by the Prime Minister, it's Winston Churchill, to the Secretary of State for Air. I have had to prepared for me the following table, which shows the number of aircraft wrecked or damaged by enemy action and in flying accidents in 1941. So this is the year 1941. The number of operational aircraft, this is aircraft in combat, lost was 2,200. The number of lost in accidents was 5,400. There were an additional 5,200 which were damaged and repaired from accidents. And that didn't include trainers, because overall there were 5,800 trainers that were lost and damaged in that time. So the numbers are just astronomical. But then, 2,200 in that year lost due to enemy action, and 5,400 lost in accidents.
The accidents could be including a lot of weather-related.
Oh yeah. There were all sorts of reasons. I spoke to a guy out here who he spent most of his time on hurricanes, but he was up north somewhere in Scotland, and he had to do an early morning flight, and he said he came up and crashed on landing, and it was only after he had crashed and got out and they started looking that he noticed that the Spitfire was one of clipped wings, and you're meant to land 8 knots faster if you've got clipped wings. Yes, the US losses 170 losses a day.
I presume they'll be related to the age of the pilots and the rush training, possibly.
Well, yeah, but early on, these weren't rushing training people before 1940.
Sure.
These were people that were squadrons, active squadrons that were converting.
Mm-hmm.
They would have been landing a lot of the time on airfields on grass strips.
Oh, they were. They were all grass strips, really.
So a few would have been ground loops, I'm assuming.
Yes, Spitfires aren't really noted for ground loops.
Are they?
There's a sort of an engineering trade-off with tail wheel aircraft. When it's sitting on 3 wheels, if the centre of gravity is close up to behind the wheels, they've got a great tendency to tip on their nose and not very much tendency to ground loop. And the others aircraft do that. The Spitfire is one of those. If the centre of gravity is a long way back, they've got no tendency to tip on their nose, really. In fact, I read a pilot's notes recently on a Messerschmitt 109, and it sort of said it's pretty much impossible to tip it on its nose by braking. But they lost 16,000 in landing accidents. Their ground loop wasn't. But at Harvard's the same, you know. On Harvard, it's very easy to ground loop the thing, but it's not very easy to tip it on its nose. You know, and there's that sort of trade-off that goes on. So, as I said, I learned to fly and fly this thing, and because I was flying the MX2, there was some similarities. That it lands with the nose high up. It came in roughly the same speed, 85 knots sort of thing, and the visibility was pretty poor. So I was landing it like I did, and I didn't have too much problem at that point. One of the other things I found in reading was the effect of British bureaucracy and the things that stopped the British making a really good effort in the war. One of which was union pressure. The unions in the aircraft factories until Germany attacked Russia, it changed after that, but until Germany attacked Russia, the unions were totally obstructive to trying to do anything in a hurry. One of the other things was the bureaucracy that appears in Britain. Some of you may have seen photographs in the latter part of the war of Spitfires that were stationed in Europe after D-Day, and they were coming back for maintenance, for scheduled maintenance, and some wise person had worked out how to attach 2 beer kegs under the wings on the hard points on the wings, and you see lots of photographs of Spitfires with beer kegs on them, and they were flying back and taking beer to the troops.